So another, not just another, like 111 wins.
Yep. Have you
111 wins.
have you been seeing some of the discourse around this?
Yeah, a lot of it.
Uh, like
And
there was a guy on Twitter, like a guy with a check mark, a guy that covers sports in LA for the LA Times, that was actually suggesting that we go back to the pre 1969 model of playoffs, which is just the World Series. Lunatic.
ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I do
I understand
I
being
do
frustrated.
right. I mean, obviously anything like that is coming from a team that just lost.
Mm-hmm.
But I do kind of understand somehow figuring out a way to make the regular season maybe mean a little bit more since it is so long. Now
Yeah.
I see why other people argue it's just like that in every other sport. The regular season is one thing, and then you make the tournament, and then you have the postseason. However, baseball is so long. I feel like the regular season does actually need to mean something. Now I understand now we've got multiple teams getting buys, so that does kind of help. But in this way, in a way, we're kind of not sure if that helps or hurts.
Yeah. And I mean, I've put forward that as a theory, way back in March when we first started this pod. And that was one of the first things we talked about was the new postseason format and how it was going to affect, the teams that got the bye. We talked about that very early on in this podcast.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, you had the best explanation as to why it didn't affect the Astros as much as others. Um,
But the
but
Dodgers
the
had that same
Dodgers,
reasoning.
I was gonna say, yeah, the
Same
Dodgers
thing
were
as the
kind of in that
Astros.
same boat as you. They were able to kind of coast into the playoffs. They didn't necessarily have to be fully ramped up or fully ramped down.
You know what I think
And so,
the difference between the Astros and the Dodgers are when it comes to this?
well, I
The
know the
re
main difference, in my opinion, would be their bullpen. That's really
the
what it kind
bullpen
of
is
boiled
one.
boiled down
They
to.
they didn't do a great job of making sure they had the bullpen depth at the trade deadline, and some of their guys kind of fell apart. Part of it, though, and one of the main reasons why the Astros have such a deep bullpen and have so many guys to throw, is the Astros have about 7 starting pitchers that like you legit would be okay starting in a playoff game. The Dodgers this season, I think that more than the time off, more than anything else, their pitching staff, like when you really look at their pitching staff that they brought into the postseason,
Well, if you look at the
it's
pitching staff
very
they brought
thin.
into the regular season versus what they brought into the postseason, it's
Right.
different because obviously they lost Walker Bueller, and they lost
Dustin May isn't the same.
exactly. He's coming back from injury and still not looking right. So there's definitely
Kershaw missed
concerns
some
there. And
time.
yeah, Kershaw's missed quite a bit of time, and that's kind of par for the course for him at this point. But it's
It's their pitching is very thin. For
but honestly,
like
that
looking at
does
their roster for a team that won 111 games, like their pitching staff is really thin.
that's what honestly makes it even crazier that they won 111 games. That's what's
Yeah.
kind of crazy to me is that they were able to do that with the pitching that they had. I told you every time I went over to my grandpa's house, he was bitching about their pitching. Little
Yeah.
rhyme intended.
It's just
Like,
it's very thin. It was very thin. And then when you add on top of that a guy like Dave Roberts, who does not let his starting pitchers go 3 times through the order. He doesn't let them get beyond 5, maybe 6 innings. So you have to really rely on that bullpen. In order to do that, you have to have 7 guys in that bullpen that you legitimately trust. I'm going to go back again to the Astros. In that 18-inning game, I felt comfortable with every single pitcher that came out of the bullpen in that game. And you know what? Every single pitcher that the Astros had in their bullpen, except for Jose Urquidy, who I also feel comfortable with, pitched in that game. Every single
yeah,
one of them, I felt comfortable with them having the game on the line. The
yeah, no,
Dodgers,
that's the big difference
a
to
Dodgers
me
fan
is
can't
the
say that.
bullpen.
A
I
Dodgers
agree.
fan cannot say that.
Well, and then you got teams like the Padres who they have starters that are actually going deep. They let their
Right.
starters go deep, and then they have a couple guys that they rely on to finish the job, and that's working for them. Like you, Darvish, going deep into games. Joe Musgrove, always going deep into games. So I mean, that's got to be the difference right there. Is really the pitching for the Dodgers, and it sucks because I mean Walker Bueller, former Cy Young candidate, like hell of a pitcher. You lose him for the season. That's a tough blow.
Yeah.
But I do kind of side with some of those Dodger fans out there, not the crazy ones that want some crazy stuff to happen. But I do kind of agree in a way that the regular season might need to mean something a little bit more than it does.
I mean,
I don't know the answer. I don't
in
know how
my
to fix that,
in
but
my
it
perfect
seems
world,
like that.
we go back to what we had before the wild card game, and we do 3 division
Straight to the
winners.
division series
Yeah, do 3 division winners, and
and
then
a wild
2
card.
or 1 wild card. Wild card faces number 1 seed. Either you do that, or maybe you realign divisions to where it's
See, that's the
2
hard part because
divisions in each league. Maybe.
I do still like having more postseason teams.
Yeah, I mean,
That's where
I'm
it's
not the
hard. It's really
I'm
hard.
I'm not the biggest fan of expanded postseasons. I'm not.
Not expanding it past what it is now, because right now I think is like the limit.
Yeah.
But
What I don't want is, and as much as I love the NBA postseason, I don't want for it to be like that in baseball because the season is too long. NBA season is too long. It's way too long. The regular season, you don't need 82 games to decide who the 16 best teams are. You don't. You really don't.
it is usually decided a couple weeks before the end of the season. But I like that because it they get to do the whole play everybody thing. So I kind of like that.
Yeah, it's a more balanced schedule for sure.
Right. So
Uh,
that's why I do like how it is. But
so
it does seem like two separate seasons. Like you got the
yeah,
regular season and the postseason, and it literally is like completely different.
yeah.
But
Now, like I
but
think
see with that one, you have less times do the low seeds end up winning. That
that is
doesn't
true.
happen very
Baseball is
often.
more random. Baseball is
Yeah.
way
So
more random. That's why you
exactly.
need a long season to determine who the best teams are because it's so random.
Right. And since it is such a long season, why not just make the playoff series all 7?
I could get behind that.
Because
Making them all
that is
7
gonna
aside
that
from the wild
helps
card.
balance it out a little. Well, yeah, the wild. If we keep the wild card, that's still got to be bing bang
But at the same
in and
time,
out.
what I say to those Dodgers fans and the Braves fans, and well, not as much tonight, the Yankee fans, I guess, but what I say to those 2 fan bases
Mets.
that start talking about, the 5-game series and really emphasizing the 5-game series. If these were 5-game series, you'd be down 3-1. How often does a team
You
come
mean
back from 3-1?
7 versus
If they
5?
were
Yeah,
7,
yeah.
if these series were
I know
seven
what you
game
mean.
series, you'd be down 3-1. So
I
I don't
know.
really want to hear you bitch about it being a 5-game series and that's why you lost. You didn't lose because it was a 5-game series. You lost because the other team beat you 3 out of 4 times.
Yeah, I mean you're definitely right about that. I just with it, I'll say more the Dodgers. So I'm trying to be a little bit not as biased. Really, more the Dodgers. I think would have been able to maybe come back from a 3-1 deficit because they were so good and because the chances of them losing 3 games in a row, and that's kind of the same thing with the Braves. The chances of the Braves actually losing 3 games in a row when they had a 14-game win streak at some point in the season. The Dodgers had a double-digit win streak during the season. I think they do both actually have more of a chance than most being
Even with
down three
their
to one.
even with their really thin pitching.
Well, the Braves would have been able to come back out there with
With
Freed.
Max Fried, yeah. The Braves,
So
the Braves are the better team, and I think than a 7-game series that might have played out, but again, who knows?
I know. I'm just
With the
saying
Dodgers,
that might help. At least it would help you feel better about it. Make it go 5. Maybe make it go 6 instead of just the 4 because they won 3 of them. You know what I mean? I
yeah.
don't know. It
I mean,
just
I get it. I get it. I get
just
being
because it
frustrated.
is such
I
a
get being
long
angry.
season to be done so quickly, even if it wasn't my team.
Yeah.
In a way,
Like I said,
you
I'd
know?
be fine if they went to 7-game series in the division series. You know, basketball used to have 5-game series in the first round, and they scrapped that and went to the 7. You know, it only
I
adds
think it just helps actually decide who's a better team in the long run.